Welcome back, everyone. This is Shay from the PEMNA Secretariat. This conference is for the budget CoP meeting. So if you're planning to attend the Treasury CoP meeting, please connect to the TCOP VC link we sent you previously. Please make sure you mute your microphone when you're not speaking and state your country or organization first, then your name. Today there will be two BCOP sessions, and the first one will be moderated by Mr. Bernard Myers and the BCOP facilitator. The second BCOP session will be moderated by Mr. Alexei Balabushko, a senior public finance specialist of the World Bank. With that, I'd like to give the floor to Bernard.
Jay, and I'd like to welcome the PEMNA members back for day 2 of this 2020 plenary conference. Yesterday we had a very full morning of presentations and really, I think, a very active period of discussion. Looking first at just the fiscal policy measures that have been taken by 3 countries, and then reflecting a bit on some of the tension that exists between continued need for stimulus along with the decreasing fiscal space that's available, and talk through that. So I thought I'd first just kind of reflect or sort of share some of my takeaways from yesterday's session before we get into our next BCOP discussion. I do want to thank Pakunta also for kicking us off in that discussion yesterday and helping generate a lively discussion. I think it was particularly useful to hear, I think, how some of the stimulus packages for different countries were targeted toward different groups. I think we saw that very clearly, I think, in the Korea presentation, for example, where they had 4 different stimulus package. One starting off with the assumptions that the COVID period or the pandemic would be short-lived, and things that were designed to target sort of prevention of the spread of the virus, and then some emergency economic measures. And then as it began to go on, having a second stimulus package, which they call sort of disaster relief targeted, and then a third, and then a fourth, with the third being much more broad-based all around, and then the most recent one being really targeted towards a number of social protection measures. Our representative from Thailand also, I think, gave a very rich presentation, as well as of the 3 phases of stimulus packages and responses that the government has had there as well, which also are just rich in providing details of the purposes and objectives of each of those components in each of those 3 different phases. And as they had particularly measures that were aimed at supporting the health system and healthcare measures. They had soft loans to support small and medium-sized enterprises. There was tax relief measures in there, as well as direct payments to citizens, especially on the lower end, so more social protection measures. They're recognizing that the pressure it really had on revenues, but still had a variety of measures phased over time to address the needs of both businesses and of the poor. Vietnam, of course, also shared their experiences, which included the similar combination of using various tools to try to meet to respond to the crisis. Tax relief certainly was one. Tax relief measures, postponing the payments in some taxes and pensions, direct support to citizens, as well as some lending to employers. All of these measures, and I think in the Vietnam case, containment of the epidemic occurred very quickly, but the impacts on the economy continued to persist. In the second session, I think we dove a little bit deeper into this tension, again, between the fiscal stimulus and the decreasing economic pressures. And in the presentation in the Philippines in particular, I think the point was made very clearly that even though there was intense fiscal pressure, that the government felt this moral imperative, nevertheless, to act. and to take measures to respond. And one of the things that had been helpful in that was some early collaboration with the central bank to bring down interest rates on domestic bonds, where interest rates had initially spiked, and through this coordinated action with the central bank, they were able to bring down rates. We also had a fascinating presentation from the World Bank the chief economist's office, where he highlighted some of the economic impact and how it's varied across countries in the region. I think expressed some concern that we can expect that over the next several years that economic growth will probably be a bit lower as it takes a while for economies to respond. There are high debt levels, as you mentioned, across the countries, but unfortunately, a lot of that debt is held domestically, or it's private debt. And so that should help bring some relief. But some of the economies that particularly depend on tourism are feeling that impact. I think you indicated more than economies that may be able to rely on exports. And so their economic recovery could be a little bit quicker. And then we had some very helpful country updates, quick country updates from Vietnam, Indonesia, and Myanmar, as well as the presentation of the PEMNA survey from the Secretariat. I think the Secretary noted that they only had a limited number of responses so far. And so for those countries that haven't had a chance to participate, they encouraged us we could still submit responses to that. Those responses really try to get at what's been the economic impact of the pandemic, what are some of the measures that the governments are targeting. So they would like to finalize the survey results and then share that with the rest of the network in January. Now, just as we look at the next session today, by having a BCOP session, we have a chance to, just in a smaller group, to consider some other issues that particularly, I think, affect the budget office. Alma Kanani, our co-chair of the PEMNA Steering Committee, had mentioned in her opening remarks just the importance also of transparency and integrity and accountability. One of the things that we see in some of the headlines around the world are occasionally references to either corruption scandals or questions about where government money is going. And that is a greater risk during this time where perhaps procedures have been expedited, or some of the normal procedures have been changed in order to make sure that the governments can respond quickly. But also, I think there's so much economic distress and pain that many citizens still have great needs. And even when governments say, oh, look how much we're spending, perhaps an average citizen is saying, but what about me? I may not be feeling the benefits of it. So I don't understand. I see that government says we're spending a lot, but I don't know where it's going. I don't see who's benefiting, and I don't understand that. So in this session, we wanted to explore a little bit more about the monitoring and reporting on the uses of public expenditures that are designed to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, and how are we as budget officials helping to show transparency and clarity to citizens and to other branches of government about how we are responding. I think in our presentation yesterday, we saw parts of that. And in the Korea presentation, they also showed how much the implementation rate of some of the programs. But I think there's an acknowledgement that in some cases, money doesn't always reach the intended beneficiary in some of the country activities. So in this session, we'll only have one sort of formal presentation. That'll be from Mr. Arun Araya from the World Bank office in Jakarta. But most of the time, we want to have just some short informal country updates, just to share how countries are meeting some of that need for themselves and for the public, just to report and monitor on the uses of COVID expenditures and to what extent we're able to see what's the impact of those programs that we've designed. I think this was a question that was asked yesterday, in fact, by the IMF advisor of, do we understand the impact, and do we readjust programs for those that are not working to maybe increase spending on those that are working. And so after the presentation from Mr. Runaraya and then the country updates, we want to just have a time of questions and answers and active discussion. So I think, as the Secretariat suggested, please feel free to put your questions in the chat function, and we'll try to cover as many as we can. It could be to those representing, or it could be to those, perhaps other countries who haven't presented, just to share some of their experiences. The other thing I want to just mention before we start is that at the end of the two sessions, we'll actually come back together with the TCOP to have kind of a wrap-up session. And that's also a time where we'd like to share with our Treasury officials some of the things that we talked about during the budget sessions, the two budget sessions. And so I'd like to ask at the end of the two sessions if there'd be a couple of volunteers from the countries who might be willing to take perhaps 3 or 4 minutes just to share some of their takeaways from today's discussion, as well as perhaps from yesterday's, what things that you benefited from, things that you learned, things that you think were particularly helpful. So again, I'm going to just ask at the end of the second session if we might have a couple people who would volunteer. So just be thinking about that now as well, if you'd be willing just to share some of your reflections on the plenary conference. Okay, so first I'd like to ask Arun Araya to share some of the experiences that Indonesia has had. Arun is a senior public sector management specialist based in Jakarta. He has, I think, been in Jakarta for a few years, leading the public finance management dialogue for the World Bank there and working very closely with the budget office in Jakarta. And so he's going to share some of the World Bank's collaboration with the Director General, the Budget Director. So Arun, I will hand over to you if you'd like to share your screen.
Thank you very much, Bernard, and good morning to all of you from Jakarta. I'm going to share experience of Indonesia in budget transparency and enhancing citizen participation. I'm sharing my screen, which should appear soon. So the presentation relates with Indonesia's experience of enhancing budget transparency and participation, and with a special focus on COVID-19 mitigation. On the left-hand side of your screen is the budget transparency app that has been developed by the Ministry of Finance in close collaboration with the World Bank, and I'm going to talk about it a bit later. Just want to give a background that while Indonesia is very high on budget transparency, the citizens' participation is low. So Indonesia is ranked 18th in the world in the budget transparency as per the Open Budget Survey of 2019. And it has made tremendous progress in the last 5 years after the Financial Management Information System called SPAN was installed, and it gave the digital database to the government, Ministry of Finance, DG Budget, to be able to give the timely information to citizens through its websites. However, the citizens' participation is low. As you can see that it has a score of 20%, and there is a tremendous improvement which can be done. It is second in the region, and it is better than the global average of 14%, but still that is a scope which needs to be covered and show the way how it can be possibly done. Now, in this background, it is important to see that to further enhance transparency and participation, Indonesia has strong database of government revenues and expenditure. As I mentioned, that the government's financial management information system SPAN records every transaction that comes in or goes out of state treasury. So that is a remarkable achievement, and that information is available. 100% of payment to government employees or government vendors is done through SPAN. SPAN can provide real-time information of revenues and expenditure from state budget. So that is an important thing, and it can timely prepare financial reports in any form that it can be done. There is a software called OMSPAN which has been developed, which is being used by government employees to track expenditure related with their spending units. This is also on a mobile phone, so government employees are located in different spending units, around 100,000 of them can access the online real-time information of expenditure related with their spending unit and also allocation. So keeping that background in mind, we thought that since there is a huge amount of database which is available in SPAN, why don't we use this information to provide it to citizens as per their needs? The technological landscape of Indonesia needs to be understood, and we examined that, and we felt that smartphones are the best way to reach out to citizens rather than the traditional websites or other mediums. So as you can see that of the 265 million population, 132 million are the internet users, around 50%. And active social media users are also 49%. And mobile phone unique users are 67% of the population. And 45% are users on the smartphone. So that gives a profile that although the internet connection is there to 49%, but largely through the mobile phones. And if you see the device usage, it shows that mobile phone is available with 91% of the population. And 60% of the adults, 91% of the adults have mobile phone, and 60% of adults have smartphones, while 22% only have laptop or desktop computer. So there is a limit to the reach which computer or desktop can possibly reach out to people. So if in case of 22%, we want to expand it to 60% usage by use of a mobile application, and also mobile phone with 91%. So that represents the potential of reaching out subsequently to 91% of the population, because slowly the smartphone usage is increasing so it may reach 91% in another few years. So as I mentioned, there's a need for mobile application to enhance transparency and citizen participation, because there is a strong digital fiscal base, fiscal database. Internet connection is 50%, but low use of computers. Mobile phones are used by 91% adults, and smartphones by 60%, and active social media users are 49% of the adults, and up to 45% of 49% are using through the mobile phone. Now, I have a technical challenge that I was about to show the mobile application, but I came to the World Bank office, and the World Bank office network and my personal phone network are not the same, so I'm not able to present it. But if given a time, I will reach home and present it subsequently. But I have prepared a few slides which I can walk you through. So this, I will just go to the next slide. Oh, someone has annotated making the thing. I don't know who's. There is Namuna Endura, so I don't know whether I'm not able to move it. Someone has taken control of my. I will stop sharing because this is something which has been taken control by me. Yeah, so this is the mobile application. Unfortunately, I'm in the office. I'm not able to show my phone here, but this is the transparency mobile application, which has the map of Indonesia with red dots are for different spending units located across country, and you can access the information related with any particular district which you want to go. And it has two columns, budget and contract information. You can do the search of contracts and budget through the map, Indonesia map. It has a COVID-19 button, so one can monitor what is the allocation and what is the expenditure on COVID-19. You can download any budget document of government from this button, and then you have the information related with the APBN data search, which is related with the budget data search. The citizens can access the data in any form they want. And then below this, we have the news and infographics, citizens' feedback, and also the websites of Ministry of Finance. So this is a holistic position of this application. And what I will just go through a little bit of this. So you can scan through and go, as you see in the second show, that you can zoom down on any particular district to see what it is. Now this is CAB Boleho, which it shows what is the ministry expenditure, what is the budget, what is the realization, what is the transfers received from the center, and TKDD stands for transfers, and then income of that particular spending unit. One can access that information. Now, this is about the contracts. So contracts also can be seen from the map, and you can zoom it down, and then you can see for what is the name of the work unit, what is the contract number, what is the supplier contract value, and what is the realization. Like, for example, if there is a contract for building a road, and they say that they have spent around, say, 11 billion rupiah, so one can see that in the physical sense, if the road is not constructed to that level, so citizens can give feedback back to them with the button which is at the bottom at the citizens' feedback. On this screen, what they see, if they feel that this data is not correct, they can immediately give citizen feedback, and they have an advantage of attaching a photograph of the site and give it back to the Ministry of Finance, which can follow up with the concerned line ministry and respond to the citizen. Then you can also, in the next button, you can search the contracts, either nationwide, or you can select a province, or you can select a district. And you can also select by contract value, more than $2 million or more than $10 million, or you can choose by value, and also you can select a ministry. So you want to select only for a particular ministry. So that is information on a contract. Now, this is on the COVID-19 budget. So it shows, briefly, so government has prepared, fiscal support for handling COVID-19 and national economic recovery. And then in the application, it is broken down into different parts that what are the different things. So the government has made allocation of 816 trillion rupiah for combating COVID. Now, this can be seen Ministry of Local Government Expenditure, tax incentives, health, corporate financing, social protection, small and medium-sized enterprises. So one can go select any one of them to know more. Now, this is, for example, for the social budget. So one can see, if you select social, what are the different programs which the government is going to make allocation for. So it gives what is the three bars there. So first bar is about what is the budget allocation. Second is DIPA, what is the final budget, after revision. And the blue line shows what is the realization. So at any point of time, citizens can see what are the COVID-19 related programs and what is the realization so far, why is it going. So it can then ask for questions and a feedback. So this is basically, I will stop here. Unfortunately, my phone cannot process it because of the Wi-Fi incompatibility, which is a pity, but I can do it when I reach home after a while if there is an interest. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Arun. So if
Over to
you
you,
could
Bernard.
stay around, because there may be some questions afterwards about the application. So next, we'd love to hear just some country updates. I think there are a few countries that have already agreed to share. If you could just take maybe 3 or 4 minutes just to share any updates from your country that to help us understand how you're doing monitoring and reporting on COVID-related spending. May I first ask Ms. Soo-Young Kwon from the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Korea, just following along on the program. If Ms. Kwon is, yes.
Oh, thank you, Bernard. I have already discussed about the implementation rate of our supplementary budgets yesterday, but I want to elaborate more in specific. In normal times regarding the budget expenditure, we normally can track all policies implementation status through the D-Brain system. But the D-Brain system is an internal system to track for the officials. And for the citizens, the openfiscaldata.com is where all citizens can check monthly implementation rate. And for overall budget, Ministry of Economy and Finance and the Ministry of Home Affairs hold monthly implementation meetings in order to coordinate quarterly goals and check whether the line ministry and local governments are on track. If not, the staff ministries tries to figure out what is holding them back from implementation and try to solve them. In order to track how COVID-19 policies are spent, numerous irregular implementation meetings were held. These meetings focused on tracking and monitoring implementation of the supplementary budgets because all of our supplementary budgets were targeted to mitigate COVID-19. For the supplementary budgets, MOF especially strive to ensure high speed of implementation since the COVID-19 crisis demanded swift response from the government. Also, we considered different circumstances of different segments of the society in order to effectively implement the budget. For example, when distributing the disaster relief money to all the citizens, preparation for implementing to the elderly or the people who face obstacles on digital technology were done in advance. Because our disaster relief money were distributed through the mobile app or in credit cards, so those groups needed extra support to receive it. So for those groups, we had offline procedure to apply for the disaster relief money in advance. And that helped us to distribute the disaster relief money to all the citizens and also in a high speed. This also proved to be very effective. Like I have mentioned yesterday, we were able to distribute the disaster relief money to almost all citizens within 2 months. So we adopted this method from then on. So among each supplementary budgets, we categorized the projects by similar sector or by similar policy beneficiary group. And we have set different implementation goals for each category. This way, we could handle similar problems at once that similar policies face regarding the implementation. And also, we could know which group of the society is receiving how much of the budget. And that's how we try to monitor and track the spending of the COVID-19. And what we also published, we also did the PR to the citizens monthly, how each supplementary budget is doing its implementation, and how much is spent for each group will also noticed to the citizens by the government. Thank you. That's for all.
I'm sure there'll be questions afterwards on that. May I ask next, Malaysia, if you could share some of your experience, just taking 3 or 4 minutes. I think we have Mr. Mohammed Zarin Mohammed Noor, Deputy Director for Economic Stimulus Implementation Coordination Unit.
Thank you, Bernard. I would like to share Malaysia's experience in monitoring and reporting on the use of users and impact of COVID spending. The government of Malaysia has introduced a total of 305 billion ringgit Malaysia on stimulus packages to address the impact of COVID pandemic. These stimulus packages covers beneficiaries across the people, businesses, and economy, and shall be delivered until the end of 2022. To ensure effective and timely implementation of these stimulus packages, the government of Malaysia has set up a special unit called Laksana under the Ministry of Finance. Laksana is mandated to assess and improve on the government's delivery channels, as well as provide transparent and reliable communication of the stimulus packages to the government and also to the people. In facilitating effective and timely implementation, Laksana coordinates monitoring and reporting of COVID spending via 3 key approaches. That is, first, through the control tower, where we engage the implementing agencies, the line ministries, in centralized and integrated approach. That is, we onboard all 53 implementing agencies and also ministries to set expectations and agree on the progress update reporting process. And then we engage these implementing agencies on a weekly basis to obtain progress updates and address implementation issues. And then we also facilitate across implementing agencies in order to address issues on an integrated manner. Second approach is we have built a digital dashboard to facilitate centralized data repository and reporting. Through this digital dashboard, it will enable us to drill down on the beneficiary data at various levels, such as the state level, sectors, income levels, and etc. This also allows Laksana to track delivery of COVID initiatives to the target beneficiaries in a more effective and efficient manner. Third, in order to gauge the impact on the impact of these initiatives on the people and the business, we had done our surveys, whereby for initiative that touches on the people, we had 11,000 respondents, and for businesses we had 2,000 business respondents. So based on the analysis of the survey responses, we did a further engagement to selected respondents to deep dive on key issues. These surveys and direct engagement allows for Laksana to identify key insights and provide recommendation on COVID initiative refinement and as input to Budget 2021 initiative. Laksana reports weekly to Economic Action Council, chaired by the Prime Minister, and some of the members include the economic ministers, to report on the progress and also on what are the issues and how Laksana will try to tackle those issues in collaboration with line ministries and agencies. The finance minister himself also goes on live Facebook every week to tell the people the progress on the spending of the 305 billion and how it benefits them and how they can benefit from the initiatives lined up by the government. Thank you.
Great, that's a fascinating initiative, and thanks very much for sharing that. I hope there'll be questions afterwards. Next, I'd like to ask Ms. Santano, the Director of the Budget Department from Myanmar, to briefly share their experiences in 3 or 4 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. So in Myanmar, to mitigate the economic and social impact of the pandemic, the government of Myanmar launched the COVID-19 Economic Relief Plan, CERB, on 27 April 2020. So the CERB consists of the 7 Goal 10 strategy, 36 action plan, and 78 action covering a broad range of fiscal measure and policy response. So in line with the CERB goal, we are doing the fiscal response such as a monetary stimuli for macroeconomic environment, for investment, trade, and the banking sector, provide labor benefit extension, providing cash and in-kind transfer to vulnerable household and IGP can, promote the use of the available mobile payment services, allocate expenditure for impact of medical-related products, financing response to the COVID-19 pandemics. So, external financing began the critical to face the financing gap and budget support. So, we are negotiating with the organization, international organization, to get concessional loan, such as IMF, RCF, RFI, and the World Bank, IDA, JICA, ADB, and so on. So, let me share about the monitoring and reporting of the COVID-19 spending. In the action matrix of the CERB, indicators are included to monitor the performance of each responsible entity, and their performance will be monitored consistently based on these indicators. So now we have found the CERB Monitoring Committee, headed by the Deputy Minister of Ministry of Planning and Finance and Industry. The first meeting was held by the 19 November 2020. So MOPFI had planned to hold a meeting with the Line Ministry to receive information on the progress of CERB implementation, and then the first monitoring report will be finalized and released. So currently we can monitor the performance of each responsible entity based on the accomplishment of CERB action plan. Regarding the fiscal reporting document, government committed to publish COVID-19 related expenditure quarterly on MOPFI website. And that quarterly report, April to June for 2019-20 fiscal year, had been published, and the 4th quarter report will be published in December. And also, we are driving the Myanmar Economic Resilience and Reform Plan, MERRP. It will be a comprehensive, inclusive, and medium to long-term plan to sustain the economic reform journey. It will highlight need to the continuous CERB action plan. The plan will be published in coming soon. So let me conclude here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thanks very much for sharing those highlights from Myanmar on the reporting as well. Our next update is going to be from the Philippines. Mr. Kim Robert De Leon, Assistant Secretary for the DBM.
Morning and good afternoon, everyone. At first, I would like to thank PEMNA and the Budget Community of Practice for giving us the opportunity to share with you and provide an update on our fiscal response to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as to highlight our measures to ensure transparency of our disbursements relative to COVID-19. In the Philippines, because of a weaker economic outlook, revenue collections for the year were projected to be significantly lower by around 927 billion or $18.5 US, equivalent to 27.8% as compared to our pre-COVID estimates in December 2019. With these unprecedented challenges, we embarked on an aggressive spending program characterized by higher fiscal deficit while consciously maintaining a sustainable level of debt over the medium term. So in the Philippines, we have 2 major recovery measures. The first one is through a Republic Act 11.69, or what we call the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. This gave the President emergency and special budget powers to reprioritize, reprogram, realign fiscal year 2019 continuing and current 2020 budgets in order to immediately respond to the pandemic. So these emergency powers took effect from March to June of this year. And as of the latest figures, total releases under the said law amounted to 386.1 billion pesos, or around 7.7 billion US dollars. Bulk of these funds went to programs that provide assistance to local income households, displaced formal and informal workers, distressed overseas Filipino workers, and affected farmers and fisher folks. These include 217.4 billion peso subsidy for 18 million low-income households who were affected by our strict enhanced community quarantine, as well as 51 billion pesos wage subsidy for 3.4 million employees of small, medium, and micro enterprises for 2 months, which are covered by the enhanced community quarantine. For the first Bayanihan 1, in terms of transparency, we are mandated by this law to report on a weekly basis. So every Monday, the President submit reports to Congress as to the status of the emergency powers, including the budget authority to reprogram, reprioritize, and realign our budget. From the DBM, we likewise participated in regular press briefings, upload all our releases on the website in order to ensure that our partners from the private sector, from the media, and of course our citizens are fully aware of what we have spent for COVID-19 pandemic, consistent with the authority under Bayanihan 1. Likewise, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte issued a directive mandating all departments of the national government to post all their procurement data and information to ensure transparency and accountability, with the public knowing to which companies or corporations government projects were awarded in response to COVID-19 pandemic. Following the expiration of the first Bayanihan law last June 2020, Congress again authorized the President to exercise additional powers through Republic Act 11494, or the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act. The second Bayanihan law authorizes the allocation of another 140 billion pesos, or around 2.8 billion US dollars, for the continuous implementation of various COVID-19 response programs. These cover ramping up of COVID-19 testing and contact tracing efforts, strengthening health sector through hiring of additional human resources for health, and augmenting the operations of government hospitals. Assistance will also be provided to vulnerable people, including displaced workers from the agriculture, transportation, education, and tourism sectors, in order for them to recover from the pandemic. To pump prime the recovery of the micro, small, and medium enterprises, financial aid will also be provided in the form of soft loans, lending programs, and interest subsidy. Unlike in Bayanihan 1, where we were mandated by law to report on a weekly basis, for Bayanihan 2, which took effect in September up to December 19, 2020, or tomorrow, reporting is made on a monthly basis. But nevertheless, we continue to engage the public and the rest of the civil society organization through our regular press briefings, participation in media interviews, and regular updating of our website in order to provide them all the valuable information that will give them an idea of government spending relative to COVID-19 pandemic. Moving forward, we also look forward for the timely enactment of two critical measures, the 2021 budget of the national government and the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises, or CREATE Act, which will propel the Philippine economy towards a strong recovery starting next year. Our 2021 budget was crafted as a recovery plan from the current and continuing impacts of the crisis. This prioritizes programs and projects that will contain the spread and mitigate the effects of the virus, restart the economy to be able to create jobs and attract investments, and transition to the post-pandemic environment. On the other hand, the CREATE Act, which is the second package of our comprehensive tax reform program, serves as the largest stimulus package for the private sector. The measures aims to reduce the corporate income tax outright from 30% to 25% as soon as it is made effective. This will help businesses to continue their operations and retain jobs while also enhancing the flexibility of our tax incentive system in order to aggressively pursue investments and generate employment and livelihood opportunities. Side by side, we also continuously promote the engagement of our civil society sector. We have been actively engaging them through the Open Government Partnership, which provides us an overview to share with them our significant accomplishments, including our challenges. We have engaged into dialogues with them through our social media platforms in cooperation with the Philippine Television Network, which is also live streamed through our Facebook and YouTube accounts of the DBM and of the national government. So I will end here the updates from the Philippine government as far as COVID-19 spending and our efforts in promoting transparency and accountability in our COVID-19 spending. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much for that excellent presentation also from the Philippines. I think our final update is going to be from Cambodia. That's Simon Su, the General Administrative Office of the Ministry of Finance.
Okay, good morning. This is from Cambodia. We would like to have an update of Cambodia on the COVID-19. So Cambodia, despite we report a very low case infection of COVID-19 and no deaths to date, we might find ourselves among the region's economic slowly hit. So the pandemic damage the economic are expected to be driven by the declining revenue of tourism, transportation, aviation, and other sectors spillover. Government sector also impact from the COVID-19. So it makes the Cambodian government expected this year GDP growth at -1.9, which is down from the initial projection of 6.5%. We also have our stimulus package around $664 million, which is both procure capital for stimulus package and what we do with the stimulus package in target group and how we monitor it. For the cash support to the poorest household, we do the direct transfer via the WING, which is our private banking partner that has agency all over the country. We also support the household who has the ID poor, which is reported in our local report and data collection prior and during the pandemic. Secondly, we do the wage subsidy and training for the suspension and closed garment sector. We also do the same, like direct transfer to each individual. And mostly we support the formal business that are registered with the government. The third one is we have the cash forward program, which we observe the labor force and give more focus on agriculture, like rebuilding the irrigation system like that. And we targeted the unemployment and workers who lost their job during the pandemic. The last one, we also do the support of SME. We provide the lower interest loan and co-financing to local business with a lower interest through our Rural Development Bank program. And how do we control this? We have a check and balance on, especially to the cash support to poor household. We have administrative data monitoring. We have a phone survey, spot field visit, and we have a focus group evaluation, and we are assessing the household spending. And what we see as opportunity and challenges during this pandemic, we can re-examine the long-term priority and carry out the reform. We also can overcome the reprioritization with the line ministry, and we can open new doors to other sectors, including agriculture and the e-commerce, to enable business and employment opportunity, also to a part of economic recovery. And just a quick update, we also have a dedicated management team to address directly on the COVID-19, which is a private sector member. Thank you. That's all for Cambodia.
Great. Thanks very much, Cambodia, for sharing your experiences and how you're targeting the needs of different sectors of the economy and also reporting on it and checking on it. I would like to invite the members of the Budget COP to share their questions. You can put them either in the chat or you can use the hand raise function in WebEx to indicate if you want to ask a question. I also may take advantage of my position as moderator to also ask some follow-up questions. Okay, so maybe I'll actually start with the question from well, two questions that are in the chat now. One from a colleague in Myanmar and the other from Indonesia. The first question just asks a bit about, in a sense, whether there were changes in the any modifications in the chart of accounts that might have been needed in order for governments to be able to monitor and report on the COVID-19 expenditures. I think that's a subject also being discussed in the TCOP parallel session. So if maybe there are a few countries that want to just update us on that, how you kind of tagged or targeted the expenditures that were specifically related to COVID-19. For example, did you create special programs or projects? Did you modify the chart of accounts to do that? And the second question ask about whether the monitoring and reporting systems that each of you have set up has effectively guaranteed that the programs, that the money was received by the targeted beneficiaries. So in a sense, do you have ways to really assess, or have you had ways to assess whether the target group is getting the money that you expected? So can I ask a couple of volunteers to address those two questions about first how you tag and target the COVID-related spending, and secondly, on how do you assure that the funding and the programs are reaching the targeted beneficiaries? Yeah. Starting with Malaysia.
Yeah, Malaysia, Zahrin. I would like to share our experience in tagging the expenditure for COVID. In Malaysia, we have our act, this COVID Funding Act, which already passed by the Parliament, where in this act we list down all the items for expenditure relating to combating the COVID pandemic. This includes expenditure on cash transfers, on special assistance to vulnerable groups, small-scale projects, wage subsidies, and the likes. So that's how we tag. So we have to report to the Parliament on this expenditure that were done. And in terms of tracking and monitoring this expenditure, as I said earlier in my presentation, we have this unit Laksana that will help ensuring that whatever that has been passed by Parliament is spent direct to the target group in an efficient and effective manner. This is done through close collaboration with all the ministries and agencies involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone from Indonesia or Korea like to share also?
Yeah, if I may say, Bernard, from Indonesia, we have two kind of classifications in Indonesia. I will just share my screen as well. We have a programmatic classification as well as the economic classification. And first, I will share the programmatic classification that was done. So here is the slide that I presented. So we have a PEN program, which is the National Economic Recovery Program, in which different programs are defined. As you can see, it is defined into tax incentives, health, corporate financing, social protection, etc. But apart from this, what is also done is the economic classification, and this is the economic classifications which the Ministry of Finance has done. Director General of Treasury has issued this classification and broadly classified COVID-19 pandemic mitigation into three broad classifications: goods and services, capital budget, and social assistance. And within that, it has also classified further into sub-economic classifications. So this monitors the expenditure to the minutest details, and it helps explaining to the country also why some of the expenditure is moving slowly. So as you can see that the social aid is one which doesn't require procurement, like capital budget and goods and services require procurement, but the social assistance is a transfer from the state exchequer to the beneficiary accounts. So the social assistance part is moving fast, whereas the capital budget and goods and services are moving slow. Capital budget is moving slower than the goods and services. So that helps the government to explain why the granularity of the particular expenditure. So the allocation is made programmatically, as I mentioned, and then expenditure is tracked using this. So they have prepared in the chart of accounts. These are included in the chart of accounts. So when the final voucher is submitted for payment, they do that, and the government can make a statement like that. Let's stop at that.
Great, thank you very much, Arun. Would anyone else like to share, be willing to share how they're doing the tracking of expenditure, or on how they're assuring that the money reaches the beneficiary? Korea, Philippines, Myanmar.
Good morning. This is Yolanda Reyes. This is Yoli from the Philippines.
Yes.
Just to share our experience in dealing with the COVID measures. Essentially, we tried to make use of targeting systems. Like for instance, in the case of providing subsidy to the poorest of the poor, we made use of the National Household Targeting System, which is actually the system applied in determining the CCT, or the Cash Transfer Program beneficiaries. Because we know for a fact that the poorest of the poor are the most vulnerable, and definitely they will be the first to be hit by the pandemic. Secondly, we made use of the Department of Transportation and through the associations of the jeepney drivers. They are the ones dealing with the jeepney drivers who happen to be also mostly affected because they had to stop driving because of the imposition of the quarantine. And of course, the Department of Trade and Industry, because they have the access to the MSMEs, because we know that bulk of the MSMEs provide employment to the most of the Filipinos, and therefore they have to be helped. And of course, the OFWs. Remember that the bulk of our are from the OFWs. They have to be targeted. So using those targets, we were able to provide assistance to those most affected sectors of the society. That's how we implemented.
Great. Thanks very much, Shirley, for sharing that. So it sounded, I mean, that's a good point where you have groups that you know you need to help, but that are hard to reach sometimes. So you're not sure that where it might be, they may be even less likely to know about what the government programs are because of just access to information. So it sounds like you worked with other organizations to target those groups, including, I think you said the foreign workers, the micro and small and medium enterprises. It's very interesting. You know, one of the things that came up was also the publication on websites of the information about spending. I think there were a couple of examples where maybe used other channels to also communicate to citizens about press releases, press conferences, I think was one thing I heard. But maybe there are, I think I heard, and then in Indonesia, there was a mobile app, but just wondering how, are there other ways in which you were able to report information about spending? And also there was an interesting example about publication of information on procurement. So, and I think that was the Philippines of, you know, who are these companies that the government is contracting with? Were there any other countries that shared that kind of information about major procurement and
Hey, this is Lloyd from PEMNA Secretariat. I think, can you hear me, Bernard?
Yes.
Okay.
Were there any countries that would like to share just on whether they were publishing any procurement data and just also how they reach out to citizens beyond the website? Okay, if there are no takers on that. There is a question from Indonesia. I'd like to ask the Philippines. You mentioned reprogram, realign, and reprioritize. Could you elaborate more on these and give examples on the implementation in your country?
Yeah, remember that when the appropriations law, it has been actually approved by Congress. And therefore, when the pandemic started, we had to go back to Congress. And Bayanihan law was actually passed just to fast track the process of realigning.
Excuse me, sorry. Cambodia, can you mute your microphone? I think it's too, Timor Leste. Sorry, Yolanda, can you continue? I'm sorry.
Okay. As I was saying, remember that Congress holds the power of the purse, so that the President of the Philippines cannot just realign funds to address the pandemic. And so we had to go back to Congress. So in the process, when we made the proposal for authority, to request for authority to be able to realign, we had to actually identify the programs and projects which have not been moving as of the cut-off date. And we think there are no chances for the others to really be pursued. And that served as a take-off point for us to realign funds going to that will support the pandemic measures. And essentially, the bulk of that will go to the enhancement or the strengthening of the first of the health sector, the health systems of the country, and of course the need to provide assistance. Remember that as early as March, there were already quarantines, lockdowns imposed. That is total. In most of the areas, particularly in Luzon. Remember that around 65% of the GDP is actually contributed by Luzon. And so it was incumbent for the president to really move fast. Of course, there was a collaboration between Congress and the executive to have the budget passed. And therefore, when it was passed, we were ready as to what specific programs and projects will really be discontinued and what will be the new programs and projects or measures to be supported to address the pandemic. So as I mentioned earlier, there should be a subsidy for the most affected. Those are the poorest of the poor, and for the OFWs or the overseas Filipino workers, and of course the other sectors like the fisher folks and the farmers who were also affected very much, and plus the small, medium, and micro enterprises will have to be helped because they do contribute in providing employment to most Filipinos, especially those who are earning mostly on a wage which that will provide employment too. So essentially, that's how we address it. Thank you
very much. Yeah. So I think we still have getting a little bit of feedback from one of the rooms that's connected. Thank you. They can mute. Are there any final questions that are, or if there are any countries that were presented that didn't get a chance to respond to the questions? One thing that we heard, I think, from Malaysia and perhaps from Korea was getting feedback about some of the programs and being able to adjust them based on the feedback they were getting from citizens. Is that, I don't recall if Korea, if you were doing that as well, or Myanmar or Cambodia, if you have any mechanisms to be able to talk to beneficiaries to see how they are responding to the program, to work out challenges in their lives. Just very briefly.
Okay. Budgets are vulnerable to
I'm sorry, Korea. I think your connection is breaking up.
Can you hear me now? Is it okay
now? Yeah, I think we can see you and hear you again. Thank you.
Okay. For the policies that are targeted to the people who are vulnerable to COVID-19 crisis, we especially did collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Welfare, because we did the Ministry of MOEF did not directly communicated with the citizens, but the line ministries who are in charge of the policy beneficiaries, they got feedbacks from the citizens, the people who are in the scene of the policy. They got feedbacks from the citizens. What is making them not? What is holding back them from getting the beneficiary from the policies? So through the monthly meetings that we held, the Ministry of Finance and the all time ministries, we get the feedbacks from them also, and we do coordination and collab of we do the modification of the policy so that the targeted people can get the better beneficiary. Like I mentioned before, like the disaster relief money, the Ministry of Finance did especially did more collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Finance about what are the obstacles, or who are especially not getting the benefit from the disaster relief money. And they also gave us the feedback that of course the sending it distributing the money through credit cards or mobile app is a benefit to most of the people in Korea, but there are still people who are not familiar with those methods. So that's why we did a preparation in advance for those who are unfamiliar with the digital method, and that's why we did an offline procedure as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's a great example of just trying to recognize who the audiences are, that they're different segments and stakeholders, and then targeting the program and the payment methods or the transfer methods to their needs. I think in some of the past BCOP meetings, we talked about citizen-centric government. And so looking at how do citizens, how can they best interact with government and receive benefits. There's so much more that one could discuss around this subject, but unfortunately we are out of time. I'd like to thank all of the presenters who shared their country experiences. Really a rich topic, and I hope that we'll be able to sort of listen again to the recording and gain more. I'm going to perhaps turn it back to the Secretary. I think we have a 5-minute break before we begin the next session for people to just stretch or get a cup of coffee if they need to, and then we'll be back for session 2. Would the Secretary like to add anything more?
No, Bernard, I think you said it all. Please come back in 5 minutes so we can have a virtual coffee break. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we're ready to start our second session. And I'd like to just introduce our moderator for the second session is Senior Public Sector Specialist at the World Bank in Washington, Alexei Alabushka, has worked in various regions across the world and actually was involved early on in the PEMPAL network, which is the PEMNA sister network in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. He will be moderating our second session. Alexei, over to you.
Thank you, Bernard, and good morning and good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome to the second Budget Community of Practice session for today. So the focus of the second session will be on expenditure reforms and consolidating spending to actually improve value for money. This would be especially important now while many countries face fiscal constraints from the crisis, but also have to deliver support to citizens and businesses, as well as recovery stimulus packages. And as we know and heard yesterday and today from multiple countries, they also have to be much quicker with approval of the expenditure measures in response to pandemic. So we will start with presentations from Indonesia and Laos PDR, and we'll also have quick country updates from Malaysia and Thailand. As we only have 1 hour, I would like to again ask our main presenters to stick to the 12 minutes per presentation, and country updates will be another 2-3 minutes. We will then have a question and answer session when you can either pose a question in the chat as you did before, or raise hand and ask question live. With that, I would like to turn over to Mr. Agun Hidayat Purwanto, who is the head of Subdirectorate of the State Budget Formulation, Ministry of Finance of Indonesia, for the first presentation.
Okay, let's start. Okay, good morning, everyone. Before I start the presentation, I would like to thank to PEMNA Secretary and team, which has given us the opportunity to share what we are doing and also learn from other countries so that we can get a lot of input for future improvements. On this occasion, I will describe how Indonesia responds to the latest economic conditions through various future government policies, which are expected to become an effective instrument, such as various reforms. And then we will discuss in detail one of the reforms that Indonesia has taken to increase its effectiveness and efficiency in budgeting. As we all know that the global economic condition never stopped being challenged. In the past years, we faced a global financial crisis. We also experienced geopolitical issues as well as trade wars, which of course affected the world economy, including developing countries like Indonesia. Currently, we are also facing health problems, the COVID-19, and which then affects to social, economic, and financial problems. Of course, these challenges do not stop here. In the future, we may also face various challenges such as climate change, which will certainly threaten an archipelago country like Indonesia. We may face also the technological disruption, and perhaps we will face other pandemics. What I want to underline is that the government must be ready to face all these challenges, because the most important thing is not how problems occur around us, but how we respond to the problem. In order to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia is experiencing a significant challenge. Indonesia has fairly strict fiscal rules and is regulated by law. For example, a budget deficit that cannot exceed 3% of GDP. The outstanding of government debt cannot be more than 60% of GDP. And also, we face the limitation in reallocating spending in the government budget. On the other hand, the response to the pandemic must be fast and precise. Therefore, it requires not only flexibility and adequate monitoring and supervisions, but also accountability in order to successful in dealing with this condition, and also the good cooperation with the parliaments. To respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia is running a national economic recovery programs in which there are various stimuli, including health, social protection, the business support, which of course requires a fairly huge budget allocation. Based on this, the government must reallocate and refocus the existing budget, but with minimal impact on growth in other sectors. In other words, efficiency and effectiveness must be put forward. Learning from this condition of the pandemic, Indonesia realized that it must accelerate and complete the transformation that was planned in advance so that it can be more responsive and resistant to the challenging situation, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic. On the reforms that government of Indonesia will implement in 2021 is to improve expenditure efficiency through cost sharpening. This must be done because the fiscal impact of this pandemic will not only affect in year 2020 and 2021, but may also affect the next few years. As a result of these fiscal pressures, the government must really take into account the direction of future fiscal policy, one of which is through selecting priority to be implemented in the future. The second focus of the government is the optimization use of the ICT, information and communication technology, in improving public services. For example, is using an information system to simplify and increase the accountability of the budget proposal review from the line ministry. In education sector, we also implement the use of kind of apps in monitoring and assessing performance of teachers in learning activities. We call it Kiat Guru, that developed together with the World Bank. And in the future, we will develop an online health services for people in need. In 2021, Indonesia will also prioritize several other sectors, including health, in efforts to control the COVID-19 pandemic, including the implementation of vaccination that will give to 70% citizens for free to reach a level of herd immunity. Besides that, we also prioritize social protection to overcome the vulnerability of the lower income class due to the pandemic conditions. In education sector also, and in infrastructure, we also plan to continue the delay of infrastructure development in 2020 because of the pandemic. And in the tourism sector is also one of the priority sectors because it is the sector that most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Furthermore, in 2021, we will also implement a redesigning budget system in order to strengthen the budget allocation mechanism to make it more effective and efficient. From all these reforms, we will discuss more related to the redesigned budgeting systems. This redesigned budgeting system is part of the budgeting reforms that has started in 2004, and we have started implementing the redesigned budgeting system in formulating the 2021 budget in the context to the need of huge budget allocation to respond to the pandemic, that the impact is projected still continue to 2021. Therefore, we need the budget allocation has to be efficient. This redesigned budget system is very important to do as a follow-up to our evaluations of the current budget reform implementations. The first, we know that the central and regional spend programs are not well synchronized, so that their performance is not optimal. The second is the program use in the planning document and in the budgeting document are different, making it difficult to consolidate. And the third, formulation of program nomenclature and outcomes of a program are not directly visible. It's too normative. And the fourth, the information in the development performance in the budgeting planning document is difficult for the public to understand. On previous step of budgeting reform, we focus on building a system that could measure the performance of a program and activity through the performance-based budgeting mechanism. And here, the redesigned budgeting system is the next step to achieve how we can achieve output and outcomes targets more effectively and efficiently. Some of the purpose and benefits of redesigned budgeting system are planning and budgeting can be more accurate in achieving the desired goals and more flexible to accommodate needs. The second is strengthening the implementation of the performance-based budgeting system by achieving more efficient outputs and outcomes. And the third, to improve the information in budget documents. Expectation for the improvement of the implementation of implementing the redesigned budgeting system includes the compilation of the logical activity relations, output and outcome, which can be more clearly illustrated. The second is there is a relationship between echelon 1 units in the same program in achieving the target of a program. And there is no overlapping of activities and focus on activities that support programs outputs. Therefore, it will result improvement in efficiency. And there is a consolidation in the exchange of data and information in achieving program targets. And the formulation of the nomenclature of the program is more measurable and is related to the focus of development. From here, I will explain more technical about the redesigning budgeting system, how it works. Prior to the implementation of the redesign budgeting system, each ministry has its own programs that described as a task of echelon 2 in each ministry and documented into planning and budgeting documents. From the document, we get a total 428 programs, which describes assignments in the 2020 to 2024 medium-term development plan, in which consists of 5 presidential directives, 7 development agendas, and 9 presidential missions, also 41 major projects. In the 2021 budget formulation, the government conducted a program redesign as one of the redesigned budgeting system steps, with the following objective: to reduce overlapping activities in order to create effectiveness and efficiency, and to increase the convergence of development activities between line ministry, across line ministry, and to reduce the cost of bureaucracy because one program can be implemented by several echelon 1 units. The number of programs will reduce, therefore will be more focused and more reflective of the real works carried out by the ministries. The result of the redesign program informing 48 specific or technical programs that only exist in certain ministries and does not exist in other ministries in the context of implementing the development programs and national priorities. And there are 18 cross programs that are used by more than one ministries. Besides that, every ministry has management and support programs that we call a generic program. I show you, this is the result of the program design. For example, we can see the number 2, the vocational education and training program. There are 11 ministries that are responsible for the outcomes of this program. So that those 11 ministries can sit together to think about the policy that must be taken into account to improve the quality of vocational education. From a planning and budgeting perspective, this can increase the effectiveness and efficiency by which cross-cutting issues can be resolved jointly between ministries. The resources used can be optimized for addressing existing issues. Besides the cross programs, you also identify specific programs that can only carry out by the certain ministry. So that the responsibility for implementation lies only with that ministry. For example, the program of energy and electricity only lies the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. This does not mean that the program is inefficient, but indeed the program is very specific and can only be carried out by that ministry. This I will show an example of the implementation of the redesigned budgeting system of Ministry of Finance in Indonesia. Here we see that prior to the implementation of the redesigned budgeting system, there were 12 programs where each echelon 1 in the Ministry of Finance has its own program, namely the Tax Revenue Enhancement and Security Program for Digitax, the Program for Supervision Service and Acceptance in the Custom and Excise for Digi Custom and Excise, as well as the State Budget Management Program for the Digi Budget, in which there are activities in order to generate non-tax revenue. In fact, we can understand that the Director General of Tax, Director General Custom and Excise, and the Digi Budget are all the same responsible for generating state revenue. However, after the implementation of the redesigned budgeting system, these three echelon 1 are in the same program, namely the State Revenue Program. The implementation of this merger is not only in terms of nomenclature, but also in the implementation of its functions, where the synergy between echelon 1 will be seen from the implementation of joint analysis and data sharing in cross-checking taxpayer data. For example, cross-checking income tax revenue data from taxpayer of a business actors in the mining sector will be matched with non-tax state revenue in the form of royalties from the mineral and coal sector, and also matched with the mineral export data owned by custom and excise data. From this cooperation, it can be seen that the data used can be sought from 3 different and complementary institutions, so that the supervision and monitoring in order to achieve the program targets can be carried out more efficiently and effectively. The result may differ in each unit, has their own programs and targets, because each unit will be focused on meeting its respective targets. Okay, Alexi, we'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purwanto, and that was an excellent presentation. I especially like your point that essentially you had to accelerate transformation that was already needed, but then was brought to the forefront by the crisis. But without further ado, in the interest of time, let's move to the presentation from Lao PDR. We'll have Mr. Pukam Solat, Deputy Head of the Division of State Budget Department of Ministry of Finance. So over to you. Laos, I think you are muted.
Yes.
Hello, Laos. Do you have two or more laptops connected in the same room? We hear some echo. You have to mute all other computers and just have one mic open. Okay, I think we hear you now. Can you speak?
Yeah, sorry, we have some problem here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think it is perfect now.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
So good morning, everybody again. Now we have a big CoP team here together from each department. So firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Pamna. I'm the deputy of the head division of the budget department from Ministry of Finance. So I would like to overview a little bit about the Lao People Democratic Republic is a landlocked and inequally diverse, monitoring and low population dynasties country with estimated population is about 7 billion in 2018 statistic. The country has a lack working age population and somewhat elderly population, and 1/3 of the population is live in the urban area according to the 2015 census. Very low population density in rural area. And the country is the low middle income economics and gross national income per capita is $2,450 in 2018. So it is one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia, and the country has sustained a robust economic growth in about 7% since 2010, and through the gross domestic product of GDP is led has the slower over the past 5 years, and GDP per capita reached about $2,585 in 2018, and infrastructure development, service, manufacturing, mining, and plantations have offered new employment and opportunity. Power rate have been dropped and from 46% in from 1992 to 1993 is 18% in 2018 and 2019. So according to the Lao Expenditure and Consumption Service 2018 and 19. COVID-19 has posed uncertain and challenge to the world, so including the Lao PDR Republic since January 2020. The government of the Lao PDR has made great effort to minimize and devastating consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic by containing the virus and protect the vulnerable. So since there was the first report case in 31st December 2019 from the International Health Declaration, China, the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Finance IT Emergency Operation Center, according to the evolving solution of the COVID-19, the emergency operation was escalated into the high level in the government and leading to the establishment of the ECOP COVID-19 committee chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister of Health. So this is just would like to show the number COVID-19 situations. On the 11th March 2020, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus in 19. In the Lao People Democratic Republic, when the plan was developed in December 2020, we have 41 confirmed cases of the COVID-19 and recovered 34, and no deaths have been reported. And the most recent confirmed cases were reported on the 16th December. So all cases have no epidemiological link of the travel history to the affected country. So the government looked early action continued transmission of the COVID before the first local case was detected. In February 2020, it established a national accord COVID-19 committee of the preparedness and the response that was chaired by the, as I said, the Deputy Prime Minister of Health. And also we are coordinate our cooperation with the government's actions and meeting with the whole daily at the Ministry of Health, and all department center and development partners have attended. And to develop the national response plan, the 11 ministry and develop partner participants and the two top axes on the 13 March 2020 to test existing plan to prepare for the widespread community and transmission. So since then, a draft national response plan was developed and has been updated according to the improvement. So this is COVID impact on the state budget implementation. We also impact by GDP growth is estimated between 3.3 and 3.6% from the initial estimations of the 6.5%, and also impact on public finance, like a situation increased difficult in macro fiscal management. And the Lao government also estimate that the whole state budget will be impacted, and the government will be lost its revenue about 6,003 billion give, widening fiscal deficits from the 3.7% to 5.8% of GDP. And the government requests to Nation Assembly to approve revised. This is after the 6-month implementation. We also request to the National Assembly to revise our budget, because the implementation of the 2020, we have also impact, like what I mentioned, is we have to reduce some expenditure from what we are missing the revenue to 2020 budget plans to reduce the revenue target is allow 30% and reduce the expenditure by 20 to 30%. And this is our key challenge on fiscal strategy for sustainable and resilient recovery. So by fiscal policy, continue to comprehensive and inform the financial sector to be solid and sustainable by the increasing the efficiency of revenue management and budget expenditure implementation, and also establish legislation that set the framework for financial security, establish a system of the mechanism, regulation, and the use of the modern tool for revenue collection and payment through the banking system, strictly implementation financial description by enforcing at the law and regulations of the financial sector in the collection of the revenue and the execution of the budget in accordance with the law. And ensure effective management of the public debt through the consideration and introductions of a priority measure in line with the public debt management strategy, as well as the law of the public debt management, and deduct budget leaks from the contingent liabilities by identifying appropriate measures such as post-disaster recovery costs at the same time. It is necessary to ensure and systematic alignment and consistencies between development planning and budgeting, by increasing spending, sharing, and increasing revenue in order to create from the fiscal sphere, aiming to the allocate more resources to the social sector and infrastructure development. Focus on the strengthening public investment management to the reduce risks associated with the multi-year budget execution by the establishing an efficiency coordination mechanism in the Ministry of Planning and Investment and Ministry of Finance, enhancing finances of the project proposal submission and monitoring and evaluation in according with the project schedule, and also ensuring quality investment and avoiding contingent liability. So on the expenditure side, we also continue to improve and financial management information system. Like now, we also try to improve the FMID system according to the PFM reform by the 2021 and 25. So this we improve the efficiency of the public. We would like to improve the efficiency of the public expenditure and reduce expenditure in the line with the collection capacity by implementing midterm budget framework 21 to 25, which will help create securities for public finance and improving progressive revenue collections efficiency. We will continue to focus on transition to modern management system like a tax list and transaction settlement through the banking system, accurate database management, especially value-add tax and personal income tax, land tax, and tax exception in the medium term. It is necessary to expand the tax revenue base from new taxable entrepreneur and business. So in the long term, the government must focus on the expenditure. Our government also will focus on the spending is tax-based by the gradually shifting away from the resource-based economics to more diversified economics. It means improve the business environment for both domestic foreign investor and set policies to promote macro, small and medium enterprise, in particular modern diversified finance access mechanism. And also the policies option, we also to evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 and outbreaks should be provide immediate economic stimuli by supporting the recoveries for fostering resilience in the medium term and long term. So the medium term are giving the limit fiscal spare. It is important to the higher spending and mobile additional resources to support well. Cash social assistance affect households and business. And in the long term, also accelerating reform to promote diversification and improve competitiveness in the private sector, supported by the improved connectivity, will be important to strengthen economics and social resilience, and more and better investment in human capital and social project can also improve households and ability to handle the impact on the shock. And here is budget implementation on COVID-19 in 2002. This is the domestic support from our government, and also we are implementation on the 3 degree from the government of Laos, and we support by the from reserve fund is allow 50 billion KIP to become a constituency fund. And here we already actually we have a loan, some loan and some contributions from social contribution allow 20 billion KIP, and we already paid allow 31.08 billion gifts, and the less fund we will continue to until March 31st, 2021. This is we can pay with still inside of the fiscal year of 2020. So the key issues on fiscal strategy for sustainable and resilient recovery. Just only we talk about the key macroeconomics target in 2021. Is the we also have the 90. We also already have the 95-year national socio-economic development plan. 21 to 25 is to translate to 11th parties Congress resolution is define the fundamental direction for the national socio-economic development in the future years, and strengthening existing political and ideological fundamental hard and technical infrastructure, social and cultural aspect, human resource development, and public governance, nature defense and security, and international type, own potential of the nation being developed into the spreading this manufacturing and service sector under green and sustainable development direction, and also improve people's well-being, plans stable foreign state and plans of the payment, and strong graduate from the least development country stage. The economic development shall continue the core duty of the party and public as whole. And this 5-year plan, we also, despite the challenge of being able to make economic strong due to limited budget, is a plan to continue to strive to overcome obstacles of the difficulty explained at the end of the last 5 years plan in order to avoid falling into the state of the crisis and rest in the issues of macroeconomic risks and high public of the foreign currency.
Laos, apologies. If I can intervene for a second, we are actually 3 minutes over time, so if you can just try to finish within 1 minute, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish. And so all of this is effectively building upon and until the nation potentials, thereby overcome the obstacle and steering the country development process in the directions of quality, focused, sustainable, and green growth. And this is for our target in 2021, and we try to lay some ceilings for revenues. Is total state revenue is 15% of GDP, and increase. This is increased to 2% of GDP, and budget expenditure is 17.3% of GDP. So it is decreased compared to the budget device. Is 1.5% of GDP. So we are going to budget deficit on average below 2.7% of GDP. So we are improving to 3.5% of GDP. So this is my our presentation from the CoP now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for great presentations. We can now move to very brief few minutes into updates from 2 more countries actually. So first, let me invite Mr. Afizal Kasa from Malaysia for the update. He's the head of section of budget policy from Ministry of Finance for a quick update on how Malaysia actually deals with expenditure reforms in these times. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and
Okay,
clear.
thank you. Okay, just the update from Malaysia. Okay, preparing the fiscal year for 2021 budget will be challenging for all countries, given the unprecedented uncertainties in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, including our countries. And for your all information, our budget has been approved by the lower house of the parliament on the 50th December, whereby this is one of the important budget in our history, because it will be used as a policy tools to one of the strategies for the budget is to combat the pandemic of the COVID-19 and also to revive the economy and also to give the benefit for the people or rakyat in our country. So since the COVID-19 pandemic has emerged early of this year in our country, short-term priority has been designed and implemented as an immediate response to this crisis, notably through stimulus packages and also recovery plans. Okay, for 2020, just want to update a bit. Almost 305 billion worth of stimulus and recovery packages has been announced, whereby the 55 billion alone is direct cash injection or fiscal injection from the federal government. So in response to this fiscal injection, Malaysian government has set up a temporary measures for government financing act, which has been approved by the parliament on the 26th of October this year. And among others, the purpose of this act is to increase borrowing level to 60% of GDP and to create COVID-19 fund, to allow the monies in COVID-19 fund to be applied and appropriated for the purpose of the programs under economic stimulus package and economic recovery plans. Okay, on top of that, as part of the fiscal consolidation to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, in the mid-June 2020 this year, Ministry of Finance has come up with the budget reprioritization, whereby the current allocation for the line ministry, which can be categorized as non-critical and discretionary items expenditure, were channeled to finance part of the direct fiscal injection from the government to combat the COVID-19. So these non-critical and discretionary items such as traveling and expenses, training programs, asset purchase are temporarily stopped during this time. And as I mentioned earlier, our budget 2021 has been approved, whereby this budget 2021 is the fifth stage of our strategies, that is to revitalize. And another important document that we are going to table for the next year is for the 12th Malaysian Plan. So this document will be tabled in January next year and will be one of the important direction for the government, especially on where we want to head during this pandemic time. So this is actually at the macro level. At the operational level, the line ministry will be asked for the next year to focus on programs that will benefit the people, and also the line ministry also will be instructed to review the current programs and activities to ensure that the allocation is channeled towards the right programs. Okay. And among the other plans that we're going to have for the next year is to strengthen the monitoring, especially on the result framework of line ministry, in order to assess the effectiveness of the programs carried out by the line ministry. This will be covered through our treasury circulars that's going to be issued in January or February next year. That's the update from Malaysia regarding our reforms in terms of expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the focused and interesting update. So now let's move to an update from Ms. Ganaporn Soisowan from Thailand. She's from Budget Strategy Office in the Budget Bureau.
Okay, hi everyone. So today I'm gonna talk about the details of the expenditure reforms in Thailand, which have been proclaimed in Thailand's Budgetary Procedures Act, given on the 8th November 2018. But due to the time limits today, I will highlight only some sections that are related to this topic. First, Section 23, in preparing the budget, regard shall be held to income estimate and the finance status of the country, the need of the national development in accordance with the national strategy, the national economic and social development plan. In this year, we also have the ad hoc approach and plan due to the COVID-19, with a will to putting forth budget expenditure efficiency and cost effectiveness, as well as achievement in public administration. Another one is section 46. The director shall put in place mechanism for monitoring and evaluating operations in the implementation of action plans and budget expenditure plans of budget receiving units, which receive budget allocation in the interest of evaluating achievement of or benefits to be derived from the expenditure of budget. Moving on to section 47, a budget receiving units shall put in place mechanism for monitoring and evaluating operation in the implementation of the action plan and budget expenditure plan within the budget receiving unit in accordance with the rules and procedures prescribed by the director. And lastly, in section 48, in case where the evaluation of the achievement of the expenditure of appropriations of any budget receiving unit reveals failure to achieve the determined goals or indicators, the director shall prepare recommendations as to improvement to be pursued by the budget receiving unit within a prescribed period by law to be in charge of superintending or controlling affairs for information. And that's all for Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thailand. Very interesting and very short, which is highly appreciated. So I guess we have about 10 minutes left, and so far we have two questions. One is, I guess, to all the countries, and one is specific to Indonesia. So I'll read out both and then let the countries respond. First one actually comes from the first session, and we didn't have time to address it. It's from Shayla from US Treasury. And essentially the question is, could countries comment on their plans to acquire COVID vaccine and whether they plan to use the COVAX program, any other programs, etc. And the second more specific question is from Korea to Indonesia, is how does Indonesia solve the issue of synchronization between regional and central budget implementation? So if you don't mind, I'll start with giving the floor to Indonesia, since they have actually one question directed specifically to them. And then we'll open up for other countries to comment on the COVID vaccine question. Indonesia.
Thank you, Alexi. Regarding to the question about it is difficult to synchronize between central and regional governments, actually we have forums, deliberation on development planning, to synchronize development targets between the state government and the regional governments. However, when these planning programs are documented in the budget document, each unit has their own programs. Therefore, it is difficult to get the direct link between the state budget programs and the subnational programs. And it is also make it difficult to conduct monitoring and evaluation to each programs. Therefore, we are trying to redesign the budgeting system. But in 2021, we will focus only for the state budget first, and then we will have an evaluation about this, and we will continue to the subnational budget. As we know that the difficulties is more challenging because in Indonesia we have 34 provinces and 514 subnational governments. So yeah, this is challenging, quite challenging to synchronize the programs. So we have to very careful to develop this budgeting system. I think that's my comment.
Thank you. Anyone would like to actually take on the question on the COVID vaccine plans? I guess since no one is ready to respond to this one for now, we can move to actually a new question that just came from Bernard, and it's essentially to all the countries that presented. Is what categories of expenditures most likely to be cut back because of the pandemic? Will it be capital expenditure or as kind of main target for cutback, or will it be protected? So anyone would like to take on the question?
Can I have a short comment on the two questions about COVID vaccine and what?
Certainly.
Yep. I think we can answer to both of those questions about how Korea is preparing for the vaccine and also what expenditure will be cut back. It is not fixed yet, but there are politically and socially discussion and controversy over what to cut back, what expenditure should be cut back, since as I mentioned yesterday and today, the expenditure for the new budget next year has rose a lot, like over 10%. So and also Korea is planning to Korea has already made a contract about 64 million vaccine shots and is planning to get more vaccines since there will be more demands. And for the new budget, we have allocated $1.3 billion for the vaccine shots. And so in the National Assembly, there are controversy that there should be some cutbacks from other expenditure sectors. And as I mentioned yesterday, we have planned the Korean New Deal, and that consists of a whole lot of new budget as well. And since that is the long-term plan, some parties from the Assembly say maybe we should postpone this and should cut back some budget there and put more resources to the vaccine. So I think it is not fixed and it is not agreed between the parties, but I think there are some considerations over there in Korea. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Anyone else? Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, would you like to take on any of the two questions?
Vietnam would like to give some comments.
Certainly, please go ahead.
I would like to share with you about the purchase of vaccine as well as the expenditure cuts. First of all, in terms of vaccine, as a country, as I said yesterday, we have done rather good job in terms of containment of COVID-19. However, there are still hidden risks around the country in terms of infection. Since the beginning of the pandemic, Vietnam have paid attention to studying and developing our own vaccine, and up to now we have begun our first round of trial of the new vaccine on human beings, and it is expected that if it is a success, then in around Q4 of this year we will have a mass production of our own vaccine. During this time, we pay a lot of attention to the vaccine produced by other countries, Pfizer, Moderna, or other type of vaccine from China or Russia. We also have a contingency plan to buy vaccine, first of all, to vaccinate the frontline people like doctors, nurses, medical workers who are working at the border gates. As I said yesterday, Vietnam gave a priority in the budget of 2021 to buy vaccine and to invest in vaccine study, and we are well aware of the negative impacts of COVID-19, and we have a very careful preparation of containment of COVID-19 to avoid a widespread infection. In terms of the cutting spending during the pandemic, we can see that the traveling, the budget for traveling and for workshop and seminars have been cut down. So we try to cut down on administrative management costs and to enhance to increase the recurrent to enhance the necessary expenditure. For the capital investment, in our opinion, we need still to continue with capital investment because they are the dynamism for the economy. They will create the stability and the good foundation for economic recovery. I think it is a right viewpoint because in Vietnam, we estimated that the economic growth rate of 2020 would be 1.7%, but according to the results up to now, we will achieve more than 2%, even 2.6, 2.7% by the end of 2020. That will be very important to set the growth target, a higher growth target for 2021. So that is the experience of Vietnam that I'd like to share with you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vietnam, for a very interesting intervention. Any other countries would like to respond?
Okay, for Malaysia, I would like to respond on the question in terms of what categories of expenditure are most likely to be cut. So as I mentioned in my brief presentation just now, in January 2020 for this year, we have cut an allocation for the line ministry for both operating expenditure, OE, and also development expenditure. And the main reason for this cut is because the line ministries underspent of this allocation due to the MCO, the Movement Control Order. So that's why certain allocation, for example, under DE for the construction of the infrastructure buildings have been stopped for a while because of this MCO, and due to that, there's an excess of allocation for this year. So that's why we take the decision to make the cut to both the OE and DE, which are underspent, and then we channel all those allocation to allocate for the fund to combat the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. And also I would like to add the question in regards to vaccine. Okay, for Malaysia, Malaysia has given the commitment in terms of the COVID-19 by signing an agreement with Gavi on the 24th November 2020, so that we can involve with the COVAX facility. And then in terms of the COVID Funds Act, also we have allocated around 3 billion ringgit Malaysia as a space for us to procure this vaccine, if the vaccines, let's say, ready for 2021 or 2022. So this actually the figure or the allocation for this vaccine has been allocated under our COVID Fund Act. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I guess what this discussion showed to us, not only that it was very excellent in reach and excellent presentations, that we can certainly spend much more time than allocated, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. So we'll have to conclude soon and move to the next session. So I once again wanted to thank all the presenters and participants for really excellent discussion. And before we conclude the session, I would like to pass the floor to PEMNA Secretariat for an announcement they wanted to make. PEMNA Secretariat, over to you.
Secretariat comes in. If I could just ask if there might be, just in the wrap-up session, if there might be a couple representatives that might be willing to share just a few highlights from the BCOP discussion today, or any particular things they remember about yesterday's joint session, just to be able to share with the TCOP members some of the things that we talked about, or what you particularly appreciated about this year's plenary conference. That would be helpful. So it's just, we have just a couple, one or two country volunteers, just take 1 or 2 minutes, that's all, just to share.
Hi, Bernard. This is Yolanda from the Philippines. Yeah, can I do my own takeaway, just very briefly?
That'll be great. Thanks for that'll be the wrap-up section. Thank you. Would anyone else?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be after in the wrap-up session once the TCOP joins us.
Okay. So I just have to wait.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll call on you when after they join us. Anyone else from Thailand or Indonesia?
Yeah, Thailand can do it too.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we have at least 2 volunteers. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks very much then, and I'll turn it back over to the Secretariat. Thank you, Alexi. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
So I think,
Secretariat, would you like to do announcements? Because we also see announcements coming from you in the chat.
I think we're having a short break while the TCOP connects. So it's a chance, again, another 5 minutes or so, just stretch your legs or get a drink of water.
the T-COP has joined the B-COP for the wrap-up. Hi, Dr. Ho.
Thank you, Fabian. We're still on a short break, I think.
This is Lloyd from PEMNA Secretariat. I think our mic was muted while we made the announcements. So what we announced was that we're waiting for the TCOP participants to join our BCOP connection so that we can continue the joint wrap-up session. So while we wait, please have some time to stretch your legs. And if you have any additional question to speakers, you can send them to the Secretariat team email account, pemnasec@kipf.re.kr, and we will try to get it answered by the speakers. So thank you very much, and sorry for that technical glitch. Thank you.
So thanks a lot. I think most of the TCOP members have joined. Actually, I see most present.
Okay, hi Fabian. So we can wait about maybe 4 more minutes for the TCOP participants to reconnect. Thank you very much.
Laos teacup, are you connected? Hi, everyone. Let's wait for 1 minute. There are some teacup participants who haven't connected yet. Is anyone from the Laos teacup connected? If so, can you respond? Laos, are you connected from the teacup side? Hello, Laos, speak up. Are you guys connected together with the teacup representatives?
I think we are ready. Welcome back, everyone. I'm hoping you didn't have much trouble to find the way back to this joint CoP wrap-up session. Before we proceed, I'd like to inform you on the structure of this session. First, we are going to share the takeaways and future priorities from the parallel sessions or joint sessions of the day one. Then the Secretariat will briefly explain about the activities in PEMNA Phase 2. We can share takeaways and future priorities from the parallel CoP sessions or joint sessions of the day one. We have volunteers from BCOP and TCOP. So Philippines and Thailand volunteered for the BCOP sessions. So Philippines, would you like to go first?
Hi, this is Sioli from the Philippines. My takeaway will be very brief. Well, nobody knows and had this COVID-19 pandemic coming. And we can all feel the repercussions, especially the most vulnerable sectors in our countries. And clearly, as shown, our respective governments are moving heaven and earth, so to speak, to take the necessary measures to address the effects of the pandemic. During the first day of this conference, which is a joint conference with the TCOP, I get the feeling and the assurance that we share so many things in terms of the analysis, the impact of the pandemic in our respective countries, and the different measures and responses being adopted to lessen the impact of the pandemic. And no one really knows when this will end. But I think with continuous dialogues and sharing provided by this avenue, this makes things a little reassuring and better because being member countries of the PEMNA, which is the very essence of PEMNA, gives us the opportunity to share and learn from each other. I think that's my takeaway from all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you very much for sharing your takeaways. And Thailand, would you like to share your takeaways?
Hong Pim from Budget Bureau, Thailand. I have two key takeaways today and one future priorities that I'd like to share. The first one, I got it from yesterday discussion. I learned that every country have various fiscal responses towards COVID-19. Some countries increase total government budget to deal with the pandemic, while some countries try to decrease or maintain the same government level and use reallocation instead. So we learned that each country should use whatever suits them the most in terms of appropriate stimulus packages, the most heavily impacted area that needs support, budget or definitely have all available resources at the moment. And secondly, we like to compliment Indonesia on the presentation today about the use of the cost ban, the strong database of government that can track government revenue and expenditure. I think that's a really good idea that you have the system that can track real time and also show to citizens so that can enhance transparency and citizen participation. And hopefully Thailand like to adapt that too in the future. And thirdly, the future priorities. In the future, we hope that we can cure or will protect ourselves from COVID-19. And hopefully by the next time we have PEMNA meeting, all the countries here will recover the economy back to normal and be able to share what we had done, what measures we used, and how we recover from the money we spent on COVID-19 instead of other developing activities. So I guess that is from Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pongping. And is there any other countries to share takeaways from the BICAP? Vietnam, would you like to share?
Yes, we would like to share a little bit. First of all, I agree with Thailand. It can be said that with what we have discussed in the plenary session and in the BCOP session, each country has our own measures and approach suitable to our context in controlling the pandemic. And the more important thing is that besides the solution, we have a monitoring system, evaluation system to find out whether our policies are really efficient and effective to the people. What are the results of these policies? And I hope that after the PEMNA this year, next year, we will sit down together to evaluate the efforts of different countries in this pandemic, but instead of online PEMNA like this, we will have offline meeting together. Then we can really exchange interesting information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vietnam. If there is no countries to share from BCOP, we are moving on to TCOP countries. Laos volunteered to share takeaways. Would you like say something about it?
Hi, I'm on behalf of National Treasury in Laos. First of all, we would like to thank you just meaningful and practical presentation and experiences from many countries in PEMNA. And so we also get some key takeaway from session 1. And we know that many countries that affected heavily from COVID-19, especially expenditure and revenues, is worst affected from this pandemic. So, and from session 1, we learned the different measures that many countries presented, especially tax relief measure that we also apply that. And another thing that it is the way that the way that some country present about strengths and weakness of each measure is very helpful, because the way each country manage COVID-19 affected along with expenditure and revenue is depending on each country situation. So we learn from that, and we will adapt from some measure to adapt in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laos. And Philippines or Vietnam from TCOP, would you like to share a few words?
Yes, on behalf of the Bureau of the Treasury of the Philippines, I'd like to thank the PEMNA network for making this event possible. So the sharing and the is very much informative, and I think it's something we should be reflecting on as we try to further improve our practices. So for the TCOP, the specific TCOP topics, I think for the pandemic, the pandemic demanded from the Treasury a lot of things, and specifically it demanded to maximize its fundraising capabilities. So I think both the Philippines and Vietnam, the presenters demonstrate the importance of making sure your borrowing framework, your borrowing system, option systems, borrowing systems are up and running. So any improvements you can do to make fundraising easier must be implemented. Second takeaway is the importance of TSA. So receiving the revenues as little as it is, as soon as possible, is really crucial in having the resources to fund the ambitious stimulus programs of any government. Now, I think Korea's D-Brain has shown that all governments must adapt to the new information technology revolution. And I think the issue really is that's the future, but the transition to that ideal future is tough, and it was made tougher by the pandemic. So in the case of the Philippines, when we're still in the early stages of adopting the IFMIS, we had to temporarily defer the full switch to the IFMIS until the crisis has abated. But for countries which have relatively established the IFMIS way before the processes are already clear and a lot of the agencies are already taking them, then the disruption is not that substantial. Hopefully, by next year, we can all get back to normal. We can meet each other again personally and further share more importantly, the lessons learned after the full year has passed. So once again, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your takeaway. And Vietnam, would you like to share takeaway in terms of TCOP side?
Regarding the TCOP session, the takeaways that Vietnam has drawn on, first of all, this is a special opportunity so that we can sit down and share experiences. We would like to express our thanks to the PEMNA Secretariat and also the TCOP members. It is a regret that because of time constraint that we do not have the representative from PEMPAN. So we haven't had the chance to listen to experiences from European countries. And my feeling after the 2 days of our conference is that, first of all, today we have shared experiences and we have listened to experiences from countries. And I realized that even though each country may adopt different methods or each country may have a different programs, we aim at the same goal and objective. Supporting people and to maintain the social life to the maximum that we can and to do things in order to recover our economies. And I also think that countries have been aware that the pandemic has been lingered for about a year and we cannot predict when it will end. So we need to be adaptive to adapt to the new circumstance. And so through the sharings, each country can take away the lessons for how to improve the current practice. In the meantime, the sharings also help us to learn better, to prepare better for the time ahead. Like in Vietnam, we have developed the strategy for the next 10 years. So this is a good opportunity for us to review things, to think of how the strategy in the coming years can be adapted to the situation like a COVID-19 pandemic. A third message I would like to share with you is pandemic is painful. We cannot deny that, but I also see that the pandemic is motivation for us to accelerate government digitization process, especially for our state treasury system. After 1 year, we have accelerated the digitization of all of our treasury operations, and so far we have nearly 100 spending units at different budget levels, and they are now connected electronically with the state treasury system to carry out the transactions through the electronic system. Yeah, we have the online transactions. So the pandemic is significant in terms of accelerating our digitization process, which is faster than our expectation, and also an opportunity for us to think of how to expand further our digitization process in our state treasury system. So these are my 3 takeaways. And once again, thank you very much, and I wish you all safe and stay safe and healthy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vietnam.
Xin cảm ơn.
Thank you very much, Vietnam. And as you mentioned, this pandemic is a disaster, but it could be opportunities for initiating lots of new policies. So thank you all the volunteering countries to share your takeaway and all the experiences and knowledges shared during these 2 days could be helpful for planning your next steps. So now let's move on to the next part of this session. I'd like to introduce PEMNA Phase 2 activities. As you may know, PEMNA Phase 2 will begin next year, and I would like to share what we are planning for the PEMNA Phase 2. Enter. This is the overview of PEMNA Phase 2 activities, peer learning activities and research activities and advisory services program that we are proposing. And PEMNA will continue to host various peer learning activities, both face-to-face and online, like a plenary conference, CoP meetings, and study videos and webinar. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, most of aforementioned offline activities will be suspended until further notice. However, these activities may be held using online platforms until the international situation will allow for the resumption of in-person meetings. In addition to the regular peer-to-peer knowledge sharing events, PEMNA will expand its research activities and start a new initiative going forward. Based on the initiatives introduced in the PEMNA Medium-Term Strategic Plan adopted in 2019, the Secretariat developed a list of potential research activities that may be carried out by PEMNA. Furthermore, during the second phase, PEMNA will also be organizing its own advisory services program. For the rest of the presentation, we'll be briefly introduce these new activities. These are the 3 ways of conducting PEMNA research activities. The policy brief series is a knowledge product which will drill down into a specific PFM issue of interest to the members. An overview session will be held at the beginning of each CoP meeting. This is the session led by expert providing background knowledge on the overall theme of a CoP meeting. And the last one is in-depth research. This research will be carried out at multiple levels, including regional, country, and subnational government level. It could also take a holistic approach viewing PFM, or it can investigate different PFM tools, as well as different approaches to PFM reforms. This research is going to be led by a research lead hired by the Secretariat. The research lead will work with a research team composed of practitioners and or academics invited through recommendations of each CoP leadership team. And we are planning the output like 1 policy brief per year per CoP, and 1 overview session, presentation and video recordings from the sessions, and 1 in-depth paper per CoP annually. I'd like to explain a little bit about this PEMNA Advisory Services Program. This is another new initiative prepared for the second phase in the PEMNA Advisory Services Program, and as members continue to deepen their expertise in the PFM field, they seek more tailored assistance to address specific policy issues or implementation challenges unique to their country context. So this program will provide in-depth, customized consultation services to PEMNA member countries on specific PFM issues and help strengthen PFM practices and policies. The Secretariat will work with the CoP chairs and facilitators to introduce the PEMNA Advisory Services Program to respond to these demands and ultimately improve members' learning experiences. This is the steps that we are proposing to conduct this PEMNA Advisory Services Program. The maximum duration of each project may last up to 7.5 months, starting from the kickoff meetings to submitting the final paper to the Secretariat. During this period, the advisees and the advisors will be participating in at least 3 meetings, workshops, kickoff, interim, and final workshops. And the kickoff and final meetings will be conducted through face-to-face interactions. However, in the case in which a face-to-face workshop is regarded as infeasible due to unusual circumstances that would limit or restrict travel, the Secretariat may allow the advisors and the advisee to meet through an online setting. The interim workshop may be conducted face-to-face or through a virtual setting, depending on budget, availability, and other conditions, like natural disasters and global pandemics. The expected output of each project will consist of presentation materials for each workshop and a final paper prepared by the advisors. The final papers, the Advisory Services Report, is a knowledge product of up to 70 pages written in English that summarizes the project, including an analysis of the existing PFM policy or process, summarize the project, including recommendations and customized policy solutions, and future steps that the advised country can take. The length of the report may vary depending on the scope of each project. These are the next steps. The Secretariat will circulate introductory materials of the newly proposed activities by January 5th to the steering committee members, and the steering committee members will review the materials and provide the comments of the proposed activities by January 14th. The next PEMNA steering committee meeting will be held on January 21st at 10 a.m. Seoul time, and endorsement of the new PEMNA activities will be requested at this SC meeting. So please review all the materials and please give us the feedback by January 14th. Thank you. And before we close, I believe there are some people to share a few words. So, Kunta, would you like to share a few words?
Okay, Dr. Hugh. Thank you, everyone here. So, 2020 is like no other year from this conversation that as we have heard for today's meeting that we already have, all countries face very tough challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And 2020 will be an unforgettable experience for us to take lesson so that we can recover the economy and improve in 2021 and beyond. So this is meant that this year we have a very extraordinary situation. So we need to work very clear and very extraordinary too. We also learned that all countries have a strong commitment to handling COVID-19 pandemic and at the same time accelerating economic recovery. In an emergency condition like the COVID-19 pandemic, prompt, precise, and actionable steps are needed, like we already discussed before. So the extreme and extraordinary policy measures that countries take to handle COVID-19 pandemic have shown result in minimizing the impact of this pandemic, including maintaining purchasing power of the people and sustaining the businesses. So we need to help the people and help the industry too. These additional expenditure are mostly financed by increasing budget deficit, refocusing, and reallocating the expenditure. All the country have the same policy. So at the same time, we need to monitoring and evaluate what have been carried out rigorously to ensure that the effectiveness of the policies, that mean that our policy is effective, while at the same time be watchful to the pandemic development. Most countries have shared the fiscal policies responses, and some programs may need to be continued in 2021. The year of 2021 is a transitional period for handling the COVID-19 pandemic and economic recovery. The 2021 budget has a strategic role as the key instrument to facilitate the handling of COVID-19, as well as to further speed up the economic recovery. So like in Indonesia, we said that right now only government can help this situation and this condition. So we have so hope that the game changer, namely vaccine, will soon be massively produced and distributed, so we can even boost the recovery that we want to do. And finally, from the plenary conference, we already get fresh ideas on policy option to battling COVID-19 pandemic and accelerating economic recovery, as well as consistently do reforms in 2021 and beyond. This is from me. This what we got from today's webinar is very helpful and very useful for us to share and to know what the other country do, and we can have fresh idea, so we can enter 2021 in a better condition. Thank you. I come back to you, Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Pak Kunter. Ms. Tang Titui, would you like to share a few words? Bernard, would you like to a few words before we close?
I just want to thank everyone both on the BCAP side and the TCAP side just for the excellent just participation and the time devoted to really produce high quality presentations and to really engage in the discussion over these 2 days. I think the Secretariat has invited us also to pose additional questions, which can be shared with some of the presenters after the meeting. And so that's something perhaps to take advantage of as well. And one of the things we wanted to encourage is that we have those exchanges in between meetings as well. I think the Secretariat has shared highlights of an exciting program for the second phase. And just want to encourage you to also share your comments and questions once you get the material so that we can have a rich discussion about it at the steering committee meeting. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bernard. Fabian, would you like a few words?
Thank you, Dr. Ho. Maybe just very quickly to thank indeed the participants on the TCOP side for the numerous volunteers. We had 8 presenters and countries sharing their experiences, but also a very lively chat. And so although we all regret not having been able to meet face to face as we did before, I think, and the time was certainly shorter for this online session, there are also some benefits in it. So enabling this very lively exchange, knowledge exchange through the chat box, Q&A throughout the sessions, sharing materials. And so it would indeed be great to find a way to record that and to continue this discussion. So thank you very much to everyone, to the chairs and to the secretary for organizing that.
Thank you, Fabian. Jay from Secretariat has announced.
We now have one last announcement. You will receive a SurveyMonkey link for a post-meeting evaluation survey for this meeting by email after this meeting, and also the link will be shared on the chat window. And please complete the survey by next Wednesday, December 23rd. If you have any questions about the meeting today and also about the new activities that Dr. Ha proposed, please contact the Secretariat. Thank you all for participating so actively today. The meeting materials and meeting summary will be available on the PEMNA website when they're ready. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Hope you all have a wonderful and safe holiday. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Goodbye.
Bye,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Really.
Thank you. Bye-bye.